Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and so Steins Gate, right? We're on episode 14. We're on episode 14. I've waited a while after episode 13 because things were busy at work and everything, and I feel like at this point I need to devote all of my brain functioning power towards Steins Gate, and we're sticking with Cherry tonight because the berry chaos needs to end, but I don't think that's going to happen, so let's dive into this, shall we? So, you may be wondering why Whiteboard Coon already has text upon it. That's going to be because of a comment that we're going to talk about here very shortly. But I want to talk about the English dub for episode 13 before we dive into these comments and what is involved with them. I want to talk about the dub first. We're going to just start with the chaos. Why not? Why not go backwards? Why not? So, I want to say first and foremost, J. Michael Tatum is so good in the dub. He is so good in the dub. And the more unhinged things get, the better he is. I love him as Okabe in this. When he is looking at Moika after she shot Mayuri at the opening of episode 13, and he's like, I swear to you on my life, you will pay. I was like, oh no, I believe that. I believed it. And when Kurisu was starting up the time leak machines in the back, he like swore like GD. He's like, do as I say. And it was like, oh my God. It was palpable. Like the tension and anger. Like I feel like sometimes Miyano Mamoru is an amazing voice actor, and he adds such personality to the characters that he portrays that sometimes it's like, can you compare to Miyano? And I feel like J. Michael Tatum gives Miyano, like, it's just beat for beat. Like, it's really good. Again, it reminds me of Death Note. Miyano Mamoru plays the main character in Death Note, and his English dub voice actor, I thought, just beat for beat matched it. So it was great. On the grandmother's death, there's the line said by Okabe in the English dub that reads, to Mayuri, it's like time itself had stopped on her death. And I'm like, well, that connects to time stopping for Okabe now too, doesn't it? Because Okabe can't move forward past the moment Mayuri dies. He keeps going back trying to change the future, but he's just in a loop. He cannot get past that moment. And so he's just stuck there. So that's where we are. We're like Groundhog's Day. The moment where Mayuri decided to be Okabe's hostage, that whole scene, the dialogue, amazing. The lines, whenever he uses the time leap machine and he goes back, you hear the lines of Mayuri in the foreground. Oh, the sound of that episode. Episode 13 is probably one of my favorite like soundtrack episodes because of the use of sounds and the lack of sounds. It's great. And then when he's running to go find her the first timeline, the first time he goes back, he's like, God, I only have 3 hours left to save her. My heart, the way he delivered that line, oh, just. Also, I noticed something that I did not point out in the discussion last week that I was like, oh my God, this is a little tiny thing, but such a crazy continuity. In the restaurant where they frequent, we get like a 2-second shot of that woman as he's running by, like cleaning out the shop, and as he's screaming for Mayuri. There's a fan in the restaurant. And that doesn't seem like a big deal, but before there wasn't a fan because the Moe culture had taken out the fan store. And so there was an animate shop instead of the fan retailer. So the whole series, up until they used D-mail at Faris's request to go back, the whole restaurant owner had been like, it's too hot in here, don't use your cell phones, da-da-da. But now there's a fan in the restaurant, thanks to what they did with the D-mail. That 2 seconds of continuity, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't notice that last week. So that was really great. Amane, that part where Amane first runs into Okarin in the first time leap machine usage back. She said she had to keep Nai away from the shop in that first timeline back, and Okarin told her to keep her away too. So in the second timeline, it was probably that Amane kept Nai out anyway, and that's why they were at the subway, and that could have been why she ran into Mayuri. So it's possibly like a whole nother chain of events that were set up that manifested and happened. Wild. Okay, this is the part that I think is the most important from episode 13 to me, is that whenever Okarin first runs into Mayuri after using the time leap machine the first time, he yells at her to go, and he's really aggressive with her. And the way that Mayuri was like, please don't yell, it was heartbreaking. And then Okarin was like, oh, I'm sorry. And then she says in the dub, you time leapt after all. And he's like, yes, but I promise I'll explain. That's the only time it happens. The only time so far that we've seen, he tells her, she's like, you use the time leap machine. He's like, yeah, but don't worry, I'm going to explain it. That didn't happen the second time around. Second time around, that conversation didn't happen. He knows the conversation happened in that specific time leap moment, but Mayuri in subsequent time leaps is not going to have that conversation remembered. So that felt huge. And also huge and terrifying is the difference in tone. The second time Okarin does the time leap, his tone and everything is so different. And he even says, he's like, as Kurisu and Daru gets out of the lab, he's like, well, as long as they clear out the lab, I don't care whatever the hell they think. Like, that's already showing that lack of compassion is starting to wane already, and just given to the, I just need them to do what I tell them to. Also, a little side note, the mom that's with the bullet train kid, her English dub voice actress is the same as Chi-Chi from Dragon Ball Z. I was like, I know that dub voice anywhere. So, or it could be from Dragon Ball Z Abridged, honestly. But I know she sounds just like Chi-Chi from Dragon Ball Z Abridged or from Dragon Ball Z. So same voice actress of one of those two. He doesn't have time and doesn't explain the time leap moment in the second time around. And then there's this moment where they're at the subway station and he's holding her hand. Again, this is the second time leap usage. And she points out, Mayuri notes the nostalgia of the scene. She's like, wow, it's been a long time since you've held my hand. And he's like, yeah. And it's not even endearing. His mind is 1,000 other places than present in the moment with her. And it's heartbreaking. And so she's like, yeah, we'll have that party again someday. I know it. And then gets hit by the subway. The final line that he says in the dub for episode 13, he's like, you're not going to die. I don't care what it takes. I swear it. And I was like, whoa, buddy, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. Nope. That villain's tridecagon. I feel like we're going to be getting into more steps, but we'll just have to see. So anyway, I did have 2 comments before starting this that I want to talk about with you all. One was from Anthony in episode 12 saying, I just wanted to say you can't compress 3.24 terabytes into 36 bytes without losing information. It doesn't matter what black hole or white hole you use, not that it makes sense anyway. Yeah, I feel like that it's like the idea of Kurisu talked about to Daru and them back at the beginning of the series about squeezing, and he made fun of her, and trying to be perverted with it, about squeezing the square peg through the round hole. Yeah, something's gonna get lost in that. The question is that something getting lost Okarin's compassion and love and empathy, and the real reason why he's saving her is that getting lost along the way, and we shall see. But the reason why I have Whiteboard Kun behind me is Moomin keeps commenting, and I love it. I love it 100%. Moomin keeps commenting things for Orb on the Movements of the Earth. If you like this series and you have not watched Orb on the Movements of the Earth, I highly recommend it. They are very different shows, but that show is amazing. I love it. It has some things to do with space, which is why this comment's so relevant. But she made a comment about Orb's episode, and ironically, or coincidentally rather, it was episode 12 for that series. And it's episode 13 for this series. But it was basically about this short. And she said, there's a bonus Hank Green short, which I love Hank Green. He's great. And sent me the link to the YouTube video. Just proves how strange the universe is. So I watched that short by Hank Green. And the moment the title of it came up, I was like, oh, we're going to talk about it for Steins Gate. Because the title of the episode on YouTube is The Past is in Every Direction, by Hank Green on YouTube. So if you type in The Past is in Every Direction, Hank Green, you will find this on YouTube and you can go watch it yourself. But essentially, it's basically like a TikTok stitch where it's a girl freaking out about the James Webb Space Telescope, which I did not get into looking into too many details because I'm like, I don't want to waste too much of our time before we dive into episode 14. But the point is, she's freaking out about the James Webb Space Telescope and how time is not linear. Fun times, which I ascribe to as well. So she's asking these questions in this video, and Hank Green on the other is stitching himself in answering said questions and offering his thoughts. But she says, how do they know which direction to point the telescope in to go to the beginning of the universe, which is what they're trying to like catalog and document the Big Bang. And Hank says, well, the beginning of the universe is in every direction. And she says, well, it's because if we go back in time, all roads go back to the beginning eventually. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, oh, so my brain is swarming thinking it's like a few episodes ago where Mayuri is in 70 million years in the past at the beginning of everything, at the Big Bang, and Okarin is with her. And she's like, all roads, every world line leads back to the past, to that beginning with those two, to the very beginning of it all. It all leads back to them, right? She says, if I took a picture of Mars, of an area of space, we know Mars is in one direction, Jupiter is in another direction. And Hank Green is like, yes, direction does exist. Light has speed. And she says, if it takes time for light to arrive to us. And Hank Green's like, yes, we are seeing the leftover radiation from the Big Bang theory, from the Big Bang when we're seeing that. And she says, the universe is constantly expanding. And this line that she said, I was like, that's Steins Gate in a nutshell. She says, we started from a single point, but now we're a bunch of points. The death with Mayuri, the death with Kurisu was a single point. The death with Kurisu at the very beginning of the series was a single point, and then it exploded into all of these things with the D-mail. This death of Mayuri is a single point. And now at the time leap machine, we already have two different points that have expanded, and world lines that have expanded because of it. And it's probably going to continue, right? So the galaxies we see are not the past. We're just seeing it that way, but time has still moved for them. So it's like when Mayuri's talking about, she's like, well, I've been chasing after you, trying to find you, and eventually I'll catch up to you. It's like she's going this direction in the time frame and he keeps going back. And it's like, are they going to converge? Are they going to miss each other? It's like, I'm thinking Doctor Who. It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so because of that, I'm doing cherry. Because we're not here for the berry chaos tonight. No. We need to rein it back in. So that's what I've got. That's taken almost 13 minutes. I appreciate everybody's comments. Everyone was kind of a little quiet with episode 12, and I understand because it's manic and mayhem, but it's fine. We're in Steins Gate now. What could go wrong? So basically the episode ended with Okarin seeing Mayuri die for the third time now. She was shot in the face, she got hit by a car, and then she got rammed by a subway. So what do we do now? Apparently we're going to go back again and try to prevent it, but to what extent are we going to do that, and where does it stop? Does it stop? Is the rest of this series just going to be repeating? Is the rest of this series going to be Groundhog Day and repeating the same thing over and over again? Or are we going to go back further? We'll find out. So let's not waste any more time. We're going to see what happens. So put Whiteboard Coon back for a hot second. I also want to give a shout out to Amber Sandra for finding me just not only the files for the dub, but also finding me just the regular files so I can watch it and then just go with that. So that's exciting. I will not have to worry about thumbnails now, about spoilery things with those. I can just download it and be like, let's go into it. And I'll have the English dub to fall back on, which is exciting. I won't have to look for that. So thank you so much. That's super helpful. But anyway, I'm terrified. Not gonna lie, terrified. But what can we do? So we're going to dive into episode 14 of Steins Gate. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And I'll see you all on the other side. I think I'm just going to stand for this episode. I think I'm just gonna stand up because my neck is a little strained. I like got a little like crick in my neck, and I don't want to like be like turned back and forth with Whiteboard Coon the entire time. So I'm just gonna stand now, and we're just gonna have a full-on lecture, just debriefing what is happening with Whiteboard Coon, and hopefully you all can hear me and the mic is picking everything up. But I was really worried the first few minutes of this episode because we got the unhinged revelation that Okarin has kept going back, kept time leaping, kept going back. And I was like, oh no, his brain's already fried. And I was like, well, where do we go? where do we go from here? Do you just accept that Mayuri is supposed to die, go into the custody of CERN, all of this new stuff that's come to light? Do we just do that? Or we either keep going back further into the past, which seems to be a problem, but then how do we do that? And the answer is, we find out Amane is a time traveler that we've been theorizing this whole time. She's a time traveler, and she's John Teeter. So I was like, she has to be a time traveler. That was like within the first couple of episodes when she was talking about the brainwashing, she was talking about like how certain timelines and everything. She's a time traveler. That makes sense. But I did not think that she was John Teeter from 2036. I thought she was someone else related to John Teeter or his daughter or companion or whatever. But she's Beryl Teeter's daughter. She's from the future. She's come back with his device to potentially... I'm so curious. I have so many questions. But she's able to travel through world lines. So things are starting to come together, and I'm really excited about that. I was like, yes, awesome, wonderful. Let's get into this. So we need to talk about all the deaths of Mayuri. We might as well just go through it, right? So at this point, he's like, I time leapt over and over again. So let's just break down. This is the Mayuri counter. I feel it's like the Krillin counter on Dragon Ball Z Abridged. So we know that she's been shot at the apartment. We know that there was the car. We know that there was the subway. This is just morbid, but I kind of want to know at this point, like, what are the other ways that it happened? So do we see him like looking at her from the subway? So, and in the apartment. Yep. So, and in the Animate store, it looks like she was sniped in the Animate store. They managed to make it out, or it's a tech store. It's not the Animate store because it's now the tech store. But then he's like, and just the blood rain that comes down and just everything getting tinged red around him and him just getting more and more depressed. It was highly effective, honestly, but it was very depressing. And then, yeah, so there's a third time. So there's another time where she's shot again. And then we had another, and that was out in the open. He says, no matter how hard I tried. There was with a knife. So there was with a knife that time. And then he says, Mayuri kept dying. And then there's like her on the bridge. Something happened there. And then all the lines, and then the dots and everything. And then there's the stairs, like all these different places he tries to take her down to like keep it from happening. Her falling down the stairs. And then getting hit another time. Oh, wow. And the sparks and everything. What was that one shot before? It shows like, yeah, the subway. And so then her getting hit again. And then there's another random time. So that's at least 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Oh my God. And there's the watch cracking. The watch cracking. The moon is red instead of blue this time. They're out in the street. There is, it looked like, what was that? It looked almost like a geisha. What was that? Yeah, like a geisha with a fan and the fireworks. The sunflower, that's a big symbolism there. The butterfly, the cicada, yeah, everything goes back. The umbrella, everything turns red and is tinted. And the rain, even without Moika's thugs attacking. It was as fate itself had killed her. It was like the whole world was plotting and conspiring to kill Mayuri. That part was scary because him saying that the whole world was plotting to kill her is terrifying. So, we have these multiple times on there, but basically what it's establishing is that this timeline, this world line, this time/world line has determined that Mayuri's death is inevitable. That Mayuri's death is fixed. This world line is not letting us alter, and I know these markers are not the best. They're gonna have to go after this use, but that's a fixed point. We can't alter it. It can't be changed. It's just gonna keep happening. And Okarin is like, well, what can I do? It's like the whole thing is conspiring to kill her. The goop. I'm like, I don't know if the goop was part of it, but there is one more time where looking at the corgi in the car. I don't know if it's a corgi or not, but they're stuck in traffic, and then Moika's people come and they shoot her through the glass. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And the idea that when he goes back into the lab and he's looking there and he has like his eyes open up and there's just blood, like Mayuri's blood is splattered across his face and his eyes are like half lidded. That was the most terrifying shot of Okarin in this whole series so far. Because it's like at that point, that is like a level of desperation where Okarin's like, okay, I have no choice but just to do the most drastic thing possible. Right? Right. Yeah, of course. So, and then the car. So yeah, so at least 10 to 11 times we've seen Mayuri die in the first 2 minutes of this episode. So, Okarin is like, nope, not gonna have it. I'm going to go back. I'm not going to let, he's like, none of it. None of it is real. Yeah, because what does he say here? When he goes back there and has this realization. And he starts to think, he's like, there's no such, because yeah, he starts to question, wondering, you know, is it fated that she's supposed to die? It's almost like this is fate. And he says, well, that must be it. But he denies it. He won't believe that it's fate. He says there's no such thing. The organization Steins Gate choices made by destiny. And then he says none of it is real. Yeah. Oof. Oof. So Okarin has this realization that the idea of Steins Gate, the idea of the organization, the idea of destiny, that it's not real. Because, you know, someone with main character syndrome, if you were telling them that fate has determined this would happen to them, they'd be like, but I'm the main character. This can't happen to me. Couldn't possibly happen to me. What are you talking about? And it's like, well, yes, it very well could. I wanted to look up fatalism. I feel like we're going to look up a couple things in here. Fatalism. Yep, the belief that all things are predetermined and therefore inevitable. I want to know how, like, basically... that they're powerless to do anything for it. Not something that someone with main character syndrome would really ascribe to. The idea that everything's outside of their, you know, out of their hands. As theological fatalism, according to which free will is incompatible with the existence of an omniscient God who has foreknowledge of all future events. This is similar to theological determinism. Ooh, what is theological determinism? I feel like that would go into there. The concept of a creator deity dictating all events in history. Everything has been predestined by an omniscient, omnipotent divinity. Well, here's the thing. If you were Okarin and you had main character syndrome, you would probably want to be the center of that theological determinism, where Okarin is kind of like, what if I'm the one? What if I'm the one that is shaping history? I mean, that would fall into this. This is really starting to connect a lot to Death Note, and I'm really excited by that because I love Death Note, but I'm like, ooh, Okarin and certain characters are starting to line up, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to feel about that. But yeah, so then there is logical fatalism that propositions about the future in which we currently, it's either false or true, and it can only be false or true if future events are already determined. So the logical fatalism, because I don't really know if we want to ascribe theological fatalism to this, because Okarin is not spiritual in that sense. He just believes in like science and Steins Gate and all of that. Although if you were to make Okarin a god that controls everything, I don't think he'd have a problem with that at this point, as long as it saves Mayuri. But I feel like maybe the fatalism that Okarin is getting more into is the logical fatalism, where events are determined, as that's what he's mad at, because the event that's determined is that Mayuri's gonna die. That's the event that's been decided. That's what's gonna happen. There's nothing we can do about that. And he's trying to deny that option from being even an option itself. Then there's causal determinism that's treated as distinct from fatalism on the grounds that it requires only the determination of each successive state in a system by that state's prior state, rather than the final state being predetermined. So It's a little bit different than fatalism. So everything just happens kind of in order, and it's not the final state that's predetermined, but it's rather like the steps. It's like a proof, maybe. And then there's the view that the appropriate reaction to the inevitability of some future events is the acceptance or resignation rather than resistance. For example, 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche discusses what he calls Turkish fatalism in his essay The Wanderer and His Shadow, where he makes no distinction between the terms fate and fatalism. This view is closer to the everyday use of the word fatalism and parallels defeatism, which you can understand why Okarin for a hot second is like he doesn't want to give in to fatalism, because that's giving into defeat. There's nothing he can do. There's no way he can save Mayuri. It's just going to happen and he has to accept it. And that goes against every construct of Okarin's character and what he's done so far in helping to save Mayuri from like her after her grandmother's death and creating the time machine. So you can understand why Okarin would be against fatalism and that as a whole. So interesting. Okay. So let's get past this introduction. This episode was great. I was like, okay, all right, here we go. Also the sunflower, in this. So this episode called Physical Necrosis. Things are decaying literally around us. Things are decaying literally around us. And with the introduction of the time machine and everything, it's all gonna get crazy. I don't have enough Dr. Pepper, but that's okay. So when he goes back, I will say the one thing that did make me feel better about this episode is that when he went back this next time, after everything, like, I'm not one to celebrate the deconstruction of Okarin's character and the breakdown of his psyche. I don't like that about that happening. However, if I am to say one thing I am excited about is the fact that he hasn't completely given up his character. He hasn't completely become a robot or a monster or a mad scientist. There's still a spark of Okarin left in him in this episode that I really appreciated. The show has not given up on that with him yet. So yeah. So he locks Kurisu and Daru out of the lab, which was a change, and then decides, what am I going to do? What am I going to do at this point? And the water droplets matching the rain from the beginning. He's like, I've got 3 hours. How am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And then he has the incoming message from Kurisu. And that would honestly drive you insane. Like, multiple times in this episode, he goes, yeah, here we go again. You said it again. You said it. How he's not gone crazy already from sending these versions of his memory back to himself, and it just, how it's not overloaded his brain, I don't know. But that would be crazy to have like a Groundhog's Day scenario where you keep reliving the same moment over and over again, and it changes, little variables change, but those variables are because of what he does, which is kind of, this episode sort of encapsulates everything that's happened so far in the series, where he has been causing these things to happen, but he's the one that's determined how the situation changes, like with the D-mails. So it's so wild to see that kind of have a meta formation in this episode. It's crazy. I don't know if there's a point of the cinder block and the 3 holes in the cinder block and the dragonfly on the cinder block. What do there's a lot of dragonflies in this, dragonflies and Japanese symbolism. There's a lot of dragonflies in this episode. What do dragonflies, they symbolize, let me find, what do they symbolize? It depends. They're the winning bug or victory insect. They symbolize agility, determinedness, and victory for samurai warriors. I'm taking this from silversea.com, so don't quote me on this. Interesting. Well, determinism, we talked about determinism just a second ago. You know, that fits him very well. Interesting. Okay. The dragonfly is cherished in Japan as an insect that protects babies, because even if you didn't have a mosquito net, if a dragonfly were present, it would eat any pests that come around, acting as a guard for the baby. So the dragonfly on the cinder block, it could be one, the dragonfly representing Okarin trying to protect Mayuri, because she is literally, she's not a baby, but she's innocent. But it could also be maybe the idea of protecting time, protecting the world line. Okarin has this whole thing about saving the world, so that could kind of all connect with it. That's interesting. I'm wondering too, because the cinder block itself if you look at a cinder block, it's got like 3 holes in it. I wonder if we're looking at, like, you have Amane, you have Okarin, you have Moika as our 3 time people, or it could be Amane, Kurisu, Moika as the 3 women that are influencing him in regards to time. Because Mayuri is kind of just like this. Maybe Mayuri is like the baby being protected. You know, there's lots of symbolism in this episode. But anyway, so he decides to meet her. And I was like, uh-oh, shining finger. He said, I have new info about the time machine. Let's go meet at this random undisclosed location out in the middle of nowhere. I want to talk to you alone. And when he showed up with like the gun that was the toy gun, I was like, well, that fits Okarin. But then he takes the real gun from behind her and I'm like, oh, that's more dangerous. That's even more dangerous. And he says, hands up. And she did put her hands up. And that allowed him to take the actual gun. Yep. Who are you people? Ooh, and I want to get this conversation that she has. Again, the use of silence in this episode was really, really well done. And she says, I work part-time at Arc Rewrite. So, again, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this for a hot second. So, Moika is also a part-time worker. She works part-time at this thing called Arc Rewrite. That feels like a meta on-the-nose joke about character arcs and rewriting them. It feels like an on-the-nose joke. It does. So meanwhile, I'm going to put Amane down here. You have Amane, and she's a part-time soldier. She's a part-time soldier. She's going under the alias of John Teeter, or maybe, yep, she's from 2036, which is 26 years in the future in this timeline. So she has that, John Teeter. And then she has the satellite. The satellite is her time machine. Now, here's kind of the crazy thing, right? This is the crazy thing, that things are going to get weird. If they aren't already weird, they're going to get weird from here. But my thing is, okay, we're going to talk about that time machine a little bit more. Because it was back in episode 1 when it landed. Okay? And then that was the episode that Kurisu died, right? So if we're thinking about this, did Amane go into that timeline and kill Kurisu? Because she said this agenda against her. But then Okarin was able to bounce between world lines. Did she realize, because we have this idea of, and I'll put this over here. We have the alpha world line, the alpha timeline, and the beta timeline. And then Sigma somewhere in there. So you have these 2 different timelines that have that are parallel. So this is where we're getting into kind of like parallel universes. This is where we're getting into parallel worlds, parallel universes. They have their own spider webs of world lines in each of them. But the time machine she's created, or is in part created alongside, she has her version of Okarin that gave her the gadget that can tell what world line you're in, which is connected to every time we've seen the numbers on the screen when we've transitioned from world lines. So I'm curious, like, how did Okarin get in 2036 to her to get the time machine and all this? Did Okarin get captured by CERN and made work for them? Because at that point, maybe in that world line, Mayuri was dead and he was just like, F it, I'll work for you, CERN. And then Kurisu went and worked for them too. And then they used the time machine to let her go back and do. There are so many questions about the satellite being a time machine, about her working with Okarin in the future, about why she hates Kurisu. But in this world line, she's helping them. So maybe she realized that this Kurisu and this beta or alpha timeline is different than the one she's from originally. So it's like Bizarro World. So I have so many questions about that. But to get back to Moika, she says she works part-time at Arc Rewrite. And he's like, I know you're going to raid our lab tonight and try to abduct us. And she seems she's at that moment, she kind of like looks sad, like, oh, you're from the future. Okay. And I like that we cut to the chain link fence that's all gnarled and like torn apart, because that, like, it's as if time itself is being ripped apart as well. And she says, how? And he says, because I came from the future. Now answer me. Like, Okarin is legit scary in this scene because he's like, I need to know answers. And he's a desperate man who's been pushed to the edge. And he looks like he looks 30 in this moment. He does not look 19. She's like, oh, I prefer email. He's like, no, like of all things, no. Are you all with CERN? And she said, we're rounders. So that did not answer, are you with CERN? She said that they are rounders. Does that mean you just go around and make sure that time acts the way it's supposed to? Our mission is to retrieve the IBN 5100. So she says they need the IBN 5100. She needs the computer. Which I'm wondering if the rounders and all that means that like they need it for everything to come full circle. That would kind of tie to their name. And he's like, well, she says, are you the one who stole it? And he's like, I don't know what you mean. Don't play dumb. That D-mail of yours. But then he realizes she wouldn't remember the D-mail. She lost all memory of sending that D-mail when the world line changed. So, in a weird twist of fate, it could be that Okarin, in a weird twist of fate, Okarin kind of caused this. She just wanted the computer. So, if they had gave her the computer way back when, would this all have changed? If he could have gone back to prevent that one D-mail from being sent, could this all have been different? If they'd gotten the computer, would they have come back knowing about the time machine? We don't know. Can they go back? My thing is, if this is a time machine that she has, is Amane going to suggest that to keep Mayuri from dying, they go back to like the very beginning with Moika and give her the IBN and just say, here, take it, go. Or find out where the IBN was. Because now, this is kind of the weird part about it. It's kind of like, again, the teacup that's broken, you can't put it back together the same way. It's never complete again. You could say, oh, let's just get in the time machine and go back to when the IBN machine was at Ruka's shrine. The problem is, and then we'll just give it to Moika and not have her be a lab member and not have her send the D-mail, whatever. You can't do that because you've changed the world line again since then to the point where you had Ferris involved, and Ferris got to where the IBM machine never ended up at the shrine, which means you never got a hold of it, which means it was never in the shop, which means Moika never saw it, which means Moika could never have it. So you can't go back and change it. You just can't. So it's like, what are your options? What do you do? Is she going to try to take you to another like timeline where you can possibly see Mayuri? It's just, it's complicated. It's so complicated. And he's like, why attack the lab? The IBN 5100 isn't there anymore. And she says, I can't. And he's like, you need to answer me. And she says 3 reasons. 1, you've learned things that you shouldn't have. So one thing that is not answered in this entirety of this series so far is who was the other number? Who was the other number? Because you would think that it would be Moika because she said, here, you've learned things you shouldn't have. So you would think it would be her that was sending the text saying, you know too much, and the doll's head that was bloody. But I don't think it was. Because Moika, why would she send it from another number? Like, I mean, I guess it could be her. I guess that kind of would make sense, but I don't think it is. I think it's somebody else. And then I like the chain link fence is all gnarled and ripped up. Like the timeline itself is represented by this chain link fence. And she says, 2, 1, you've learned things you shouldn't have. 2, you created a time machine. And then you can see like the foundation of the fence, the metal is starting to come out of the foundation. Like it's deteriorating. Again, physical necrosis literally happening in this. And 3, you tried to go public with it. So she's like, you basically created something you shouldn't have. You've delved into stuff you didn't need to. And you going public with it would create a node that would fix it in reality where we can't just easily... It's easier to take care of Okarin and Mayuri, 2 people, than to get billions of people involved. You can't change that. It'll be too widespread at that point. And so he's like, you knew that much. Well, I mean, they did hack into their entire system. He's like, does CERN know that much? And she says, I received my orders from FB. Now, here's where things get weird, because Moeka is all about FB. FB is all to her. I don't know who FB is. Is it Fubuki? Is it the girl that Mayuri was getting the cosplay made for? Is it for Beryl, like Beryl Teeter? Are they connected in all this? I don't know who FB is. That's the question. I don't know who FB is, but she says, I received my orders from FB. She doesn't say CERN, so that's interesting. And then he's like, well, is it a group inside of CERN? And then he gets hit over the head. It says, FB is my all. I thought it was also weird that they were just kind of parked at the car going like less than 20 miles per hour. Super creepy. They're just kind of like going slowly towards the lab to get ready for the event and turning from one point to the next. And so they're waiting outside of the apartment, ready to go in and start the mission. And I felt so bad for Okarin in this, because Okarin is begging them not to kill Mayuri. He's like, I'll go with you. He's like, I'm sorry, just don't kill her. And Moeka's like, I'm still gonna do it. Moeka's like, I'm still gonna do it. And then he's like, I let my curiosity get the better of me. He's like, I was literally an Icarus. And Moeka's like, it's too late. He's like, I was just playing around. This is why we don't play with time machines, kids. This is why we don't mess with governmental agencies. This is why we don't do these things when we are teenagers and don't have the resources. That's why we don't do that. She says, it's too late. And God, that face he makes at like 8 minutes in. Nope. No, he's like, it's too late. He's just so heartbroken. He just wants Mayuri to be safe. And then he manages to get out and gets back into the place right when Amane, and so it's like everything was happening without him being there. It still ended up, which that in itself, if I walked in and the scenario was exactly the same as it was back at the end of episode 12, just without me there, that would make me pause. I know in the moment he's like on adrenaline and going back and doing the time leap. That would make me pause and go, wait, all of this still ended up happening even with me not being there. Like, that's kind of insane, right? That's kind of insane. Kind of insane. They still had the party. They still showed up. My question is, why is Amane trying to save them? What is the deal? So curious. So he goes back into the past again. Into the back. So we have another timeline. So it's like, this is like the 12th that we've got, the 12th time leap. He's got 12 different versions of these memories. And he almost destroys it. He almost destroys the time leap machine. And they don't take him seriously in the moment because they think he's just joking around. They don't realize how deeply upset he is and how like destroyed about all of this he is. But I'm like, if he destroyed the time leap machine, what would have happened? Would Amane have come into the equation earlier if he had destroyed the time leap machine? Would she have come into the equation earlier to tell them what she knows here? I'm curious what Amane's agenda is, because she has talked about meeting Beryl Teeter. Didn't work. She's been really, the whole thing of him going to get her and that whole timeline and us not being shown it is really interesting. And I am starting to realize like why they didn't show it to us, because she's the time lord that's come into this story. But I'm like, why is she here? What's her point? Why has she hated Kurisu, but now she's helping? I'm curious where all that's going with her character. But yeah. And instead she's like, we're going shopping for the party, right? And then he just like heads out. And we get the same thing with the bullet train. Yep. We go back. So again, we have the dragonfly again on the little cup there by Ruka, like protecting. I felt, again, I've talked about this last episode. I feel so bad for Ruka. Ruka has done nothing wrong, and our poor girl has been left out in the cold by Okarin, she keeps repeating it, and then she's already gone by the time she gets there, and Okarin has like a mini crash out, and Ruka's just like, okay, like poor Ruka. Ruka's just like, what do I do? And in this moment, he just like, I mean, to be fair, if I were Ruka, I'd be really concerned because Okarin looks like on the ledge talking to her, and she's looking forward to the party. Like, he automatically knows what she's gonna say, and he's like, I know it all. And that smile, oh, when he says, I know it all. That's so disturbing. We talk about the kind of like omniscient. He kind of is, in a way, sort of omniscient in this moment because he knows everything that's going to happen because he's relived it over and over again. And it does give him, to a degree, this kind of godlike sense of power. But then the paradox of it is he can't do anything about it. Even knowing everything that's going to happen, even knowing everything, he still can't do anything to change it. Crazy. Crazy talk, right? Crazy talk. So, poor Ruka. Ruka doesn't know what to do. And Ruka says sorry. And then he ends up getting onto the bridge. And that's when Kurisu shows up. Again, I kind of feel bad for Ruka because Ruka tries to console Okarin. Okarin doesn't have anything to do with it. And then when Kurisu shows up, that's when actually he starts to accept some, some consolation. I do agree with Kurisu. I'm glad she acknowledged it at the end of this world line, that she's like, I'm going to forget that you called me by my first name on a first name basis. I'm going to forget about this conversation and everything, aren't I? But she chose to help him anyway. And God, he looks so sad and desperate in that moment. And she's like, I don't want to know what happened. Tell me what happens. I want to know the future. And him just crying about Mayuri's death. Miyano Mamoru did such a good job in this episode. Miyano Mamoru did amazing in this episode, voice acting wise. I cannot wait to hear it with J. Michael Tatum. I cannot wait to hear it. And that sounds so morbid, but it's just, their voice acting is so good. Oh, and I do like that Kurisu is really understanding in this moment that he is going through a lot and that he is suffering from losing Mayuri, and she looks so compassionate to him in that moment. This entire scene of the two of them, again, my biggest fear going into this episode was that he was going to keep going over and over and over again, which he does, but he was going to get more and more desensitized and more like away from just saving Mayuri because he loves her and more into saving Mayuri because he has to do it. And in this episode, at least, it looks like there's still that part of Okarin within him, like with him crying and being emotional, that is still attached to Mayuri and loves her. It's not just about him changing fate, it's that he wants to save his friend. And I'm glad that that part of him is still there, because I was really concerned it was not going to be. Now, this is episode 14. We got like 11 more episodes of the series. Is it going to be here in 11 episodes? I don't know. So we'll see. But I loved her kind of getting onto him, being like, okay, you've told me everything. There's no guarantee the time machine was, safe to use. You took a big risk with this. And he's like, well, humans are essentially temporal beings. And she's like, Heidegger. She's like, you're taking that from me, right? And he's like, you taught me that quote. Now, was that from, she's like, it's like you're peering into my brain. Because that's the thing. She taught him that quote from a different world line. And she's like, you knowing that and knowing that I know that is kind of like you tapping into my brain. And that's weird. Yeah. Yeah. That's why Ruka was having a kind of I was really like kind of thrown off by that, because it was the same thing. Right? And why Mayuri was too. She's like, that's just how the time leaping is. And he's like, what should I do? And so she asks when the lab is going to get attacked, and he tells her all the details. And she's like, I could think of the reasons why Mayuri keeps dying. And so we'll go back through that because it's going to come in a minute. But this is probably, I don't know if this is going to be the thumbnail or what, but she's like, let's go. Mayuri's a close friend and I want to save her too. And he's like, well, I'm sorry to drag you into this. And she's like, don't apologize. I want to help. And she's like, come on, mad scientist. I love this moment. You're bent on reshaping the world's power structure or something, right? And then she swishes and she's like, but of course. I freaking love that shot. That might be the thumbnail, is of her saying, but of course. I love that shot where she looks at him. Yeah. And he doesn't know what to do. And she's like, come on. She's like, right. You're a mad scientist, aren't you? That's such a good moment between the two of them. That's such a good moment. Like that. And then there's this just intense hand screwing scene. Look, okay. If you are new to my channel and this is the first show you've watched on it, or if you've not watched a lot of Don Mai or BL or Yuri or, you know, romance shows with me, here's the thing. Japan, I understand. Displaying intimacy is an art form. And there's a fine line between hentai and yaoi and yuri and just plain old romance and keeping it family friendly for the kids. But Japan does this amazing thing with hands. It's like skinship. It's sensual. As someone that's on the ace spectrum that is asexual themselves, I'm like, there's just something about like just hand intimacy that just gets you. And I'm like, what? It's amazing. I love it. It's just like this hand scene is like the most intimate romantic thing I've ever seen on this show. And just like, okay, I'm here for it. And then everybody's eating the damn pizza. Around the time the time leap machine is finished, we're going to go back a few more hours, just a little bit longer, just to try to have more time to prevent things. Okay. I'm amazed Amane doesn't stop them in this moment, but is Amane wanting to lead them to this point? I'm curious. That's the one thing. There's parts of this episode and the last few episodes that suggest that maybe Amane was wanting them to get to this point to talk to them and everything. But then that kind of flies in the face of, well, why didn't they trust Kurisu? What was the deal? So I'm hoping that episode 15 gives us some answers to that, but I don't know. We'll just have to see. And then, yeah, she talks about how, you know, we'll have a passphrase just to be safe. I don't know why she blushes about the spoon, unless there's some kind of like sexual reference to it. And she's like, this version of me 5 hours ago won't have known you'd call me Kurisu. That was the one thing. I wanted him to go back when he went back in the past and to call her Kurisu again. Like there was a part of me that when he saw her at the restaurant, I wanted him to get her attention by saying Kurisu and then say the passphrase. I was expecting him to do that, but I don't know if he just didn't get the romanticness of it because it's Okarin and, you know, Okarin is Okarin. Or if each version of Kurisu somehow is like different to him and special to him in some way, but he hasn't acknowledged that yet, but maybe he will in the future. I was hoping he'd call her Kurisu because I wanted her since she values that so much, but whatever. So he goes back a few more hours and we get this set up and he tries to alter to the point of maybe Moeka and them not coming as soon to the lab or whatever. And then he goes downstairs, uses the passphrase. Again, you can see the oscillating fan in the background. Oh, there it is. And we find out that she's been frequenting there. And he says the phrase to prove that it's her. And she accepts it very readily. But then again, she did say that she would. So anyway, and at that time, she's like, well, what did she say there? Because Amane was listening outside at that moment. And she says, yes. So the machine really does work. And then he's like, here's your beef bowl. So Amane was listening the whole time. So maybe Amane realized that maybe that was Amane's cue that, okay, at this point the time machine works. I need to take action because we've already reached this point. We might as well. She's like, I might as well reveal myself if we're at this point in the juncture. Okay. So we go back to the lab. And I want to see what they label on the wall here because it's translated. So return to the lab. Everyone leaves the lab. Mayuri goes to the shrine. So they have it down to like 1656, 1711, 1725, 1735. They have it like narrowed down from all the times that he's been traveling using the time leap machine. And she says this is a pretty serious situation. And then we say at whatever, Mayuri run away, Mayuri dies, time leap, return to the lab. We all kind of track it down. Okay. Rounders attack. What was that last one there? I want to go back. The the uh, labels are not very on the screen very long. Oh my god, not very long at all. Okay, Rounders attack, run away. Mayuri runs over by car. Time leap 2. So he basically has been outlining for her everything that happened that he could remember. Wild. Wild. So yeah, Mayuri dies time leap 1. And on the board, it's just like, there's labeled, there's like 3, and then 15, 16, 17. There's at least 17 times that he has time leapt to try to save her. That is crazy. That is insane. That is wild. Okay. He's like, yeah, what was the last number? I want to see. Oh my God. The number there, what was 17 on the board? I can't even see it, but yeah. It almost looks like it's in the 20s. I don't know. She's like, rather than help Mayuri escape, what about Moeka and her Rounders? Were they? That sounds like, for some reason, Rounders makes me think of Return to Oz, and I think of like the like soldiers that are on the Wheelers. Maybe that's what they're called, but it makes me think of that. She's like, could you try stopping them? And he says, I tried, but I wasn't able to prevent her death. And she's like, okay. So that's when she says, things always occur due to the existence of an underlying cause. So it's basically like a cause and effect. So the cause and the effect is the death. Something is causing it to happen, which is where things get a little scary about the whole 70 million years ago point and them going the past. Death could be attributed directly to a directly related event, such as an accident or a disease or an illness. But then they aren't necessarily the cause themselves. The Rounders are driving Mayuri to her death, but the real underlying cause is something else. And I like that we have the Morning Glories like in the background there. That's why she continues to die without their involvement. So yeah, I wondered about that last episode, if whenever he was avoiding them, but it was still with the subway, it happened anyway. Like, Moeka and the Rounders are just there to make sure that the time event happens. The event that's supposed to happen happens. And it's not altered, because that could destroy the fabric of time itself, or something to that extent. So, there's some other reason why the death has to occur. But, I mean, here's the thing, and Okarin kind of touches upon it back at the beginning of, episode 12, is that she was maybe supposed to die even as far back as when they were kids, but he prevented it. So, like, was the moment he prevented her death way back then, whenever his whole shining, like his Eye of Steiner, his reading Steiner activated? Was that around the same time that he got sick the first time when she didn't die? Maybe? Is that what was causing it? So is this like Oedipus, where, not in the sense like you're thinking what I'm thinking, but is it like a self-fulfilling prophecy that Okarin is the cause of Mayuri's death in itself, because it was going to happen anyway, but he extended it and now it's going to happen regardless? Because if you think about it, if we go over here, you have Okarin saves Mayuri, right? He saves Mayuri. But he saves Mayuri by telling her that he's going to be a mad scientist. And they're going to live out that fantasy. And then he has the thing about the reading Steiner. And then from there, they go to high school, and then they go to college and the university that has the lab. And then he starts the gadgets and everything. And everything just leads further and further down the mad scientist route, because that's what they decided. And that's the thing that kept them together, with her being the hostage and everything else. So is he the cause of all of this? And it's him. And he just doesn't realize it. He thinks it's something else. I don't know. She said it could be Mayuri's birth is the cause, the result of her own death. Well, yes. I mean, once you're born, you're automatically on a lifespan. You're on a ticking time clock anyway. He's like, well, that's fatalism. And she says, I don't support the hypothesis. I'm just saying it. The cause must be something that acted as the trigger for these events. Well, it literally could be him deciding to play mad scientist and starting this whole shebang. It could be. We'll see. So he's like, do you think if I never finished the time leap machine, maybe she could live? And he's like, well, I like that the curious. He's like, well, that's a dangerous conclusion to jump to. And then that's when Amane's like, no, we need the time leap machine. Your theory is mostly right. It's true, it'll be tough to solve this without the time leap machine. To save the world, you need to overcome the 1% divergence barrier to reach the beta world line. Now, here's the interesting thing. Like, so Amane seems pretty on board with helping them to reach the beta world line. Did Amane get stuck in the alpha world line where they are and realize, oh, this world line's shit, I need to go back home? And so she's like, oh, crud. I wonder if Amane, that night she was supposed to meet Beryl Teeter, if she got to this world line. Oh, okay. Okay, let's think about this for a hot second. What if, because she started working at that part-time store right after the satellite crashed, which is her time machine. Okay, so what if, okay, let's think about this. What if we had the very first timeline, or timeline A, as we know it, it could prove to be different, with Okarin and Mayuri and everything. So Amane lands on the building, the time machine, everything, thinking that maybe it's the same world line, okay? And that she's from, let's say she's from the beta timeline, right? The beta world line is what they call it. So the BWL, okay? She thinks that she's made it to the beta world line. She's just gone back in the past, but realizes she actually went to the alpha world line instead. She kills Kurisu, thinking that this Kurisu is the same from her timeline, only without realizing it's from the different world line, whatever. So then all the events that we've been leading up, that we've talked about in previous episodes, happen after that with the D-mails and everything, and the Steins gate and all that. And along the way, when Amane was going to meet Beryl Teeter, that's when she realized that she wasn't in the beta world line. She was in the alpha world line, because things were not as they should have been. And so she was like, oh, crud. So there is a chance that Amane has been orchestrating it since then to get to this point. Because her tune, if you notice, she still is very antagonistic towards Kurisu in that one scene, but her tune has changed a little bit. Possibly. So she realized in that moment that we need to get to the point where Okarin, and if Kurisu has to be there, then Kurisu has to be there. Okarin is able to have the time leap machine to help them get back. She's like, we need to cross the 1% divergence barrier to get back into my world line. She's like, I don't want to be in this world line. This world line sucks. So let me go back to the one I came from, and I'm going to use you guys to help me. I could be 1,000 times wrong with that. We'll see next episode. But yeah, she's like, the divergent number indicates the world line's location. And at this point, when she pulled out the divergence meter, tech gadget number 9, they're like, oh, well, these Nixie tubes, whoever made this had good taste. And she's like, well, it's you. You're the one who built it. From the future. From the future! So you have the ability to retain your memories across world lines. So she knows a version of him. Your future self used that to gauge the to create a gauge that numerically shows. So your future self. So Okarin, that is, let's say 26 years in the future. So like, that's in his 40s. Okarin in his 40s created this. So the divergence meter. The divergence meter is from 2036, and it's from like 40s Okarin. I don't know. Amane's getting to things. I know Beryl Teeter's her dad, but what if like Moika's her mom or something? When we get into some weird shit like that? Yep, to show numerically how different the current world line is from the previous one. Oh, okay. So this one is 0.33. So it's like 0.33% different from the previous world line. Oh, well that, like, you could go back and check and see, like, how different it is. So that's interesting. Okay, that creates instant rewatchability. Huh, okay. That's this world line. And so I liked the explanation that Amane gives about the world lines being like yarn, on a rope, being like, it looks like one line, but it's all made up of different strands of rope. They're a bunch of smaller threads that create this one line. I love that description of it, and that they're all world lines. So they're all independent of each other, but they lead to the same end. So basically what it's suggesting is that in this specific world line, in this alpha world line, every single thing they do, every single route is going to lead to Mayuri dying. That's what Amane is saying. But if you cross the barrier and go over to the beta world line, the result would be different if there were a big enough change to cross the divergence barrier and move from this alpha world line to a beta world line. So basically a parallel universe. If we move to this parallel universe, then all the world lines over here might have a different result than all the world lines over here. Okay. I mean, that seems fairly easy to understand. Yeah. And then she's like, fine. I do like the metaphor too that we've established. Amane is a time traveler. Also, Amane's twin braids maybe being tied to the twin braids in this example of her crossing into different world lines. I'm just saying. And then the fact that Kurisu and Okarin are like, well, we can't do this. And so Amane's like, well, fine, then I'll do it. Wild. She's like, wait right here. And she leads them up into this building. Okay. And then they get to the top and they're like, come on in. So they go upstairs in this building. Not even changing the past with D-Mills and time leaps would get you there, though. There are a number of points in time where major events occur. Events with breaching world lines that lead to separate futures, depending on what choices are made. So, the Gulf War in 1991 is mentioned, which is interesting. I don't know why the Gulf War would be mentioned. I kind of want to know that. So, Gulf War 1991. I wonder if that... Yeah, why would that have to do with anything? Okay, it involved the UN and everything. I feel like I woefully am lacking understanding of the Gulf War because I was 5 at the time. So I wonder if it has anything to do with the Collider or something. I know it's tied with the background with the Cold War, right? I wonder if anything else has to do with anything with a Hadron Collider or something like that. I wonder, and that's why they brought it up. Or if it was because it was a major event that could have had like a lot of different outcomes if things had gone just a slightly different direction. That's probably what it means. So they mentioned the Gulf War. They mentioned Y2K in 2000. And then, okay, so Y2K in 2000, well, they did establish that that's when the Stein, like he thought the reading Steiner opened up for him was around that time. So maybe that's one of the events too. There, and then the 2010, the year the time machine was developed. And so then we see the satellite. Yep, the satellite that crashed into the side of the building. Only at such branches is it possible to move from the alpha line to the beta line. Now, here's the creepy thing. This is the creepy part, okay? That satellite has been there the whole series except for one of the world lines. In one of the world lines, it was gone. So, in one of the world lines, the satellite disappeared. So that was a long time ago. We've changed the world line since then. However, what about that one where the satellite was gone? Is that going to come back and be a thing later? I don't know. But Amane's like, you have to cross from the alpha line to the beta line. Is this a thing like coherence? I watched a movie called Coherence on this channel, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm curious if this is gonna sound like a spoiler, but it's really not. I wonder if, is it possible that the Amane we knew from the beginning of this series is different than this current Amane? And the satellite disappearing in that one world line is the sign that something's changed. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't know. We're going to have to find out and see. But And Kurisu's like, what is this? And Amane opens it up, and it's a damn time machine. Yep. Oh, this. It's a time machine. From the year 2036. And then she's like, I'm the time traveler, John Teeter. Which all makes sense now. All makes sense now. The fact of the being in the forums. The fact that Amane was in the forums because she was John Teeter. The fact she was looking for Beryl Teeter, which is her dad. That all makes sense. The fact that she was being able to communicate with Okarin. Well, we've never seen Amane with Okarin when he was communicating with John Teeter. They weren't there at the same time. That all makes sense. The fact that she's the soldier, the fact that she questioned about the brainwashing, the fact that she's trying to find the IBN. So her and Moika are connected, which is why they were both, having guns facing each other. So all these connections make a lot more sense now. But I have so many questions. Why is she in this world line? Why did she take the time machine? How did they perfect it to get people to travel from one place to the next? Was that Okarin from the future? Is Okarin in the future a mad scientist after Mayuri's death? Because that brings up a whole host of questions too. Like, if he realizes that by accepting Mayuri's death and moving forward, he was able to create the time machine and just became a full-on mad scientist, but the only way of doing so was he only did it to go back and save her in the end? And what does that have to do with, like, Moika and Amane? What are their deals with each other? I have all these questions. One thing that I do want to point out here, and one thing I did want to look at, and also the idea of Kurisu being the hourglass, that part still, like, the symbolism of that is still kind of, like, up in the air. I don't know. Why is Amane like that with it? I was going to look something up. But now I've lost my train of thought of what I was going to look up. Oh no! Ah! I've lost it! Oh no! My mind is like racing with all of these possibilities of what could happen with this now and what we're going to find out about Amane. I'm so like, just what do we do? And I've lost my train of thoughts of what I was going to look up for you all to see. Oh no, it's left my mind. Oh, it's going to come to me and I'm going to have to think about it for next episode. I've lost it, y'all. I've just lost it. It's gone. The time leap machine has made me forgot what I was going to look up. Son of a bitch. Oh, I know there was something. I was going to look up what it meant. Curse you, Cherry Dr. Pepper. Curse you. Okay. Oh my. What are we going to do? So, we need to think about this. I'm so curious now what we're going to be getting moving forward. Because, yeah, we're bringing the hourglass all back, and the watch and everything, and it all comes back to Kurisu. The hourglass becomes Kurisu, which honestly, if you think about it, Kurisu is kind of like, she was the one that convinced Okarin to keep trying, to keep going back, to keep trying to save her. So she really is, like, every time Okarin's kind of doubted making the time machine or doing anything with it, she's been the one to kind of go back and be like, no, let's keep going. Let's keep doing it. So, I'm so curious about Amane being John Teeter and everything else. So I really can't wait for episode 15. I'm really excited, but I'm going to wait for some comments. I'm going to watch episode 14. I'm going to try to see what I was going to remember to ask and look up to see what I can find, but it's escaped me, so it'll come back. Or it wasn't that important. So I've talked for an hour about this episode, and my brain is all over the place with possibilities and what we could do with this. So I'm excited to see where this goes, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon with more Steins Gate. Bye.